One. Welcome back to Cerebral Palsy and Fitness Podcast, everyone. Today I have Mr. Lane Stokes. He's a marriage and family counselor, and today we are going to talk about marriage insurance and what that's about and how it affects families and children in our society. So welcome, Lane.
Well, thank you very much. I'm happy to be here and looking forward to it.
Yeah, I'm happy to have you too. And I was just of course we talked a little bit about this outside the podcast, and we were how I just came across you and how I was intrigued by by what information you had on marriage insurance and how it impacts families and children. So I wanted to kind of start this podcast on what is marriage insurance and how did you come across that? How did that come about for you?
Well, it's not marriage insurance like you have a written policy. It's more of a way of thinking, something that ensures that your marriage will be successful. And what happens to people in the beginning is when you fall in love, which is a chemical thing. It's the mating chemicals that take over the body and the mind. And for about 6 months, you're just out of your mind in love. And I don't think anybody's immune to it because it's the chemical. And so you go through this process of being just crazy in love, and everything is easy, and you can talk about anything. And if you're willing to have the sex, then you're going to have the sex all the time because that's all you think about. The mating chemicals, are created by God or Mother Nature, whatever you want to call it, to drive a couple to have offspring so as to keep the Earth's population full. And then you get into the moral issues of, well, these people aren't married and they're having sex and whatever. So, Mother Nature never cared about that. All she cares about is the procreation thing. And so you hit by mating chemicals, you go nuts for 6 months, and everything is just so easy and fun, and you just love each other like crazy. And then chemicals go away, and everything becomes difficult. And if you're not familiar with love chemicals, you don't know that they're going to take over your life, and you're just baffled by what's happening to you. And most people don't know about love chemicals or mating chemicals or whatever you want to call them. It's a fairly new concept, and old timers certainly didn't know about it. And so they fell in love and then they got married. And of
And
course, nowadays, like you say, there are a lot of younger people that fall in love, but they don't get married. And as I was talking about, before we started this, was that there are a lot of young people that are afraid to get married. They don't want to fail.
right, do you think it has something to do with um how they were raised, when they were younger and being around their parents and I guess the cultural norms and how everything kind of changed over time?
I'm sure that children must be very confused in the changing society that we have. When I was growing up, my father was the authority of the house, and you didn't cross daddy unless you wanted to. You get paddling or something. Um, and then it began to change, and it got to a place not too many years ago where parents were letting children decide on all the important matters of their childhood and even decide on which school they could go to or should go to. It was like the peers, the children were taking control over all the important matters, and the parents were kind of stuck back in the back. But it's continuously changing. And so children who are growing up in a family where the parents don't know exactly how to treat them are going to be confused. And
Yeah,
I
I
don't.
I can
Yeah,
say this. I can see that evident, especially working with students at the schools, how kids are so, when it comes to critical decisions, being in the home, what they do, what they engage in. A lot of these parents nowadays thinks that their child is their friend.
yeah,
But you have to remember it shouldn't be that way. You should be a parent, not a friend.
yeah. But that's kind of the way it is.
Yeah.
The parents feel better if they're friends. Um, if you go back to the old model of family and authority, the parents have the authority. They set the rules. The children follow the rules, and then when the child gets out of the home, moves away, hopefully he has built enough self authority that he can maintain a routine of life or something that makes sense and that will keep him for the rest of his life. But the problem nowadays is, and has been for many years, is parents don't create the authority in the child
Right.
because they're not the authority. Like you say, they want to be a friend. Well, you can't be a friend and an authority. And children usually want an authority. They want somebody to tell them what to do. I mean, look at the world, and they don't know what to do.
Yeah, I mean it's most kids, and it's unfortunate because you have, and also when it comes to, like, as you mentioned earlier, divorce, um you have one parent that's like actually parenting, trying to see their child being successful, doing what they need to do, getting them to school, doing all the things that they need to do to help the child, flourish. And then you have one parent that's like, okay, you can come to you're coming with me, but you can do whatever you want. You can wander around, you can hang out with your friends. You don't have to worry much about school. It's just like you can do whatever. And that's so disheartening. And I mean, it's not all parents, and then there's some parents that are like, okay, so if we're going to divorce, we can talk about this together and set like a game plan or rules where we can both follow and help together co-parent and help the child, maintain a healthy balance in their life.
Yeah, united front, they call it. But understand when let's say it's the mother who's the disciplinarian and makes the child follow the rules, and then he goes to the father, for his time. Um, the father doesn't want to be that authority figure. He wants the child to like him, love him, and he thinks to do that, he needs to let the child do what he wants to. And so the mother is frustrated by that because she's trying to keep the child in line. But then when he goes to daddy's, it's whatever you want to do. And then the child comes back to her with the same attitude of the father. Well, daddy says I don't have to do that. And that messes them up. You know?
Yeah, and it's funny because um I've dealt with a situation where like the mom is the more carefree, but the dad is the more
Ah,
authoritarian, and it's really complicated. And it's funny because now it's like um she's trying they're trying to work together, and they're trying to set rules, but there's still that lingering of, okay, so they're with me, they don't have to do much. And then you notice it from the child at the school, that they're just walking around campus acting like they're the big shot, not really following the rules and just doing whatever they want to do because they're not being you know disciplined at home.
yeah.
And it's really disheartening.
Yeah, and it catches up with them later when they get a job
Hmm.
and they don't know how to follow the rules at home. Then they don't know how to follow the rules at work. And they get themselves suspended or fired. And then they go on to another job and they can't follow those rules either.
It becomes
or
a cycle.
yeah, or they get into a relationship with somebody and she has rules of some sort and he can't follow them. So if you don't teach the child, if you don't discipline the child at home and teach him to follow some sort of rule, then he's going to be in trouble for the rest of his life, like you say. And then when he gets married and has kids, he's going to teach them not to have a self authority.
Yeah. How do you handle those kinds of situations when I guess parents approach you on dealing with a rough situation such as divorce?
Okay, so they approach me, and what do they want to know?
How to cope with you know divorce together, how to handle that next step, especially when you have kids.
Well, that's the big problem. If they didn't have kids, then they could get an agreement to get a divorce without anything. When they have kids, it's a problem of who's going to have the child and how long. Um, I just don't. I don't see how parents can have a you got your child here, and then he's going to have to go over here and spend the weekends or whatever with the father or the mother, whoever it is. I don't see how a parent can stand it when the child goes away.
Right.
I mean,
Um,
you fall in love with these children, these little boogers or whatever they
very
are,
kids, yeah.
You fall in love with them, you want to be with them, and then they go off somewhere else, and it
Right.
hurts.
Right. It should because they're a part of you.
Yeah, yeah,
And that's one of the it's one of the worst things is, you're it feels almost like a betrayal, you know.
yeah, yeah. And of course, my desire is that people stay married and don't get a divorce. And so most of the people who come to me, well, most people who call me for counseling of any kind is because they're hurting. And until they hurt really bad, they won't call a professional. This is the weird thing about us in society. If I have a toothache, I'm going to go see a dentist. If my appendix ruptures, I'm going to go to doctors in the hospital. But if there's something with my mind that I'm confused about, I'm not going to go to a counselor because that's a weakness. And it's a stigma. It's hard to get past. But then you have to understand that as Americans, especially probably in every culture, children are raised to take care of their own problems, to solve their own problems, because that's how you learn. And then when you get in a situation in marriage with a relationship that you can't handle, you're not going to go to a professional. You're going to try to figure it out for yourself. And that's when divorce starts happening because you cannot communicate about certain things in marriage. I tell folks, when they come to me and they're on the edge of divorce, um, I tell them, it's not the relational problems that have caused you to get to this place. It's what I call the communication structures. It's the way that we handle communication. It has nothing to do with relationship. I'll give you an example, a simple example, is when the man and the woman are talking to each other about the same issue, but from different perspectives. And neither one of them know what the other's perspective is. And so it's hard to get together on seeing it the same way when you're looking at it from different ways. A more complicated type of structure is when one person has to be right, which means the other person has to be wrong. And so they get into a discussion or an argument or a fight or wherever it goes. And um, the one that has to be right will not let the conversation end until the other person says, okay, you're right, which means I'm wrong. Couple just don't do that. Nobody's going to say I'm wrong. They'd rather take a beating. So they have to stay right. And if I'm not going to let you end the conversation until you say I'm right, then the conversation is never going to end.
Right. It's like when little kids are arguing with their parents, they always try to get the last word in, but they don't realize if you get the last word in, you're in serious trouble. Especially because you're practically talking back. You're disrespecting your parent, and some parents might take things away. Some parents might go the old-fashioned route. Uh, and that's one of the things is even as adults, we need to learn when to stop speaking, especially when it comes to arguing.
Yeah. Well, that is one of the big problems. It starts out as a discussion, maybe, then becomes heated, which is an argument. And then it's all out fight or warfare if you still don't have your way and you're determined to have your way, be right or whatever. You get into a power struggle with a child, you're in trouble, especially a teenager.
Yep,
Uh,
that's the age I work with, teenagers.
yeah, well, they're a different breed, They're not children anymore.
Yes.
They're not adults yet. They think they all want to be, and uh, they won't give it up. The parents won't give it up. And so the parents take away their phone, and the parents take away their laptop, and then the parents take away, take away, take away. And the child is just resolute, as stubborn as they are. And it's a problem. Well, you need to be able to listen. This is one of the skills
Yes.
of marriage, of course, a good relationship. You got to be able to listen to what they are saying, but we don't listen. And then if we listen to the words, we don't hear or understand what they mean. And this is basic relationship that we just don't learn growing up. I mean, David, do you remember the time your mother pulled you aside and said, "Okay, son, now I'm going to teach you how to listen"?
Yeah, I had a few of those, where they, where my parents were very constructive, and um, they never did the old-fashioned route with me. It was mostly always speaking to me or taking things away.
Yeah,
But hey, and a lot of people some people say, oh, but that's not really effective. That just makes the child uh worse. And I'm like, every parenting style is different, you know, and look how I turned out. I turned out just fine, so um yeah, I mean it's the parenting style, and I appreciate my parents always taking me aside and speaking to me. And of course there was the occasional, like the the parent would boil over in anger, and it'd be like, I need you to stop speaking, or else, I'll give you a little whack or something. And I had my fair share of those, but it wasn't anything like major.
yeah. But when one of them pulled you aside to talk, was it to talk to you or was it to listen to your side?
It was more of listen to my side, kind of like to see what I had to say, and then they would provide their constructive feedback and say, oh, but this is why, you shouldn't do this. This is why you should do this. And they kind of help guide me through that situation.
Okay.
Yeah, so it wasn't always like oh, but this is what I say, and it goes, it's they always try to have input, and I feel like, in a sense, that a child should have input in only certain situations, not all, but certain where where I feel like the child should have a voice in, because that way they'll feel like, okay, so they're listening to me, that I'm actually speaking, versus the parent just nag, and not giving the child a chance to really explain their side.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting to me that parents recognize immediately when a child is born that this child has a personality of his or her own. And why can't they remember that as the child is growing up and give the child more, more authority to defend himself or say how he feels about it? Children are so smart. I mean, they
They
understand
are.
things that parents just don't understand. But if the parent won't listen, then there's nothing but frustration.
Right, and that's what causes a lot of the internal and problems outside of the environment too, as far as the child itself. It's like, if my parents not listening to me, then why should I talk to others? Guidance counselors, teachers, a mentor. If so, there's some kids that'll eventually open up, and they'll be like, okay, so this person is actually willing to sit down and listen to me, so I should probably, do my best to listen and to see what they can provide to help me, because they're actually trying hard to be there for me.
Mm.
The I think that the child, the only thing that they want is someone to be there for them in their time of need. And if they just keep, you know, talking, it feels like for them you're talking to thin air, like where's this person at, and where are they there to support me? They need that stable structure is what they're missing.
Yeah. Well, what the child wants most is love.
That's a big one. The
They
biggest one
don't
of all is love,
they don't know how to get it. Now, you
appreciation.
look at toddlers. You can have a toddler in a room full of parents or adults, whatever. And the toddler will wander over to somebody and try to get up in the lap because he wants to be held. He wants to be loved. He got sense enough to do that. But as we get older, that's not appropriate to crawl up in somebody's lap that,
Right.
oh, and so we have to find other ways of usually manipulating to feel love. And that's, you know, I was watching a movie last night, um, Anne with an E. Have you ever heard of that?
No, I've never heard of that one before.
Well, she's a very interesting little girl. She's an orphan and she talks too much and drives folks crazy and whatever. But um, she doesn't understand a lot of things. And so when her father gets angry at her, she thinks that he doesn't love her anymore and he's going to send her back to the orphanage.
Oh,
And so here's all this stuff going on with her, and he's standing here by his horse. And I'm saying, just hold the girl. Just wrap your arms around her. That's all you need to do and reassure her. But parents don't do that a lot. They don't just wrap their arms around the child. And in marriage, one of the couple doesn't just wrap their arms around the other and say, I love you. I mean, that would take care of it, but that's not what people do.
yeah, it's pretty, it's really sad how everybody kind of tries to handle things like that. Like, I've always believed in at the end of every single conversation I have with my parents or my siblings, I always try to end it with "I love you," because you never know um when that last day or that last moment will be.
Yeah.
and you always want to make sure to leave on a positive note, and make and actually when you say I love you, actually mean it versus just saying I love you. Like put some passion into it, some emphasis, you know.
So you're saying that after a discussion or an argument with your parents, you would say, I love you?
Oh, always, because you at the end of the day, I always believe that they're still your. When I was a kid, I always believe that they're still your parents. That they're trying to do what's best for you. At the beginning, when I was a kid, I wouldn't understand what they were trying to talk about, and I'd be like, I'd go out one ear, out the other. And now that I'm an adult, a lot of the conversations we have, they're for a reason. They're even it's funny because I'll be turning 32 next month, and it's like you always learn something new when it comes about your parents. They'll always be there for you, and they'll always give you advice. And now it's like now that I'm an adult, I understand. Hey, you got to sit back and actually listen versus argue. They might be trying to tell you something constructive. You know,
Right.
keep an open mind. And that's what I tell my students, the students that I mentor, as well as some of them might perceive everything negatively. And I'm like, take a moment to picture everything in a positive light. Maybe it's something that might benefit you, that might help you push forward from that negative environment, a negative situation you're dealing with.
Yeah. Smart. Smart advice. Do they do it?
One of them's actually trying it now. I would hoping he sticks to it. That's the thing is sticking to it and being consistent.
Yeah. Well, being consistent is not something that children and teenagers are famous for.
Hmm. Yeah, that's true. I was one of those. I used to be so disorganized when it came to like schoolwork and things like that myself.
Yeah. And it doesn't end with childhood, of course. It continues into adulthood.
Oh yeah.
I had a guy come in yesterday to fix a faucet. He was 28 and he couldn't he couldn't do the work. He didn't know how to use a certain tool to do the work. He just wasn't trained to. And here he was in my house fiddling with his tool and he couldn't make it work. He was very frustrated and I was getting aggravated and he was beating on the little metal tab. I was afraid he was going to crack the tile. So I finally spoke up and said, would you mind if I show you something that I learned by reading the directions? And he said, oh, yes, all right. So I took the tool. It's called a puller. Um, and we are trying to pull a cartridge out of the wall, and it has the the cartridge has two flanges on it. Well, if you if you try to fit the tool over the flanges, it won't it won't work until you take a screw out of the back of the puller, which pulls the screw this way, and then you put the tool on the flanges and it fits. Then you tighten up the screw. Then you can turn the piece and get it out. But he didn't know how to do that. And I guess we'd have
Right.
been there all day. Maybe he'd have tried to beat the thing out with a hammer or something. I don't know. But I showed him how to do it. And then when he got to the next one, he didn't do it that way. He went right
Uh,
back to his old, doing it. And finally, I think it dawned on him. So then he went back and pulled the screw out. But this is an adult. Do we ever learn? And what does it take to learn? So we can't blame things on children too much. As they're just being children. Um,
right.
we adults are just as bad in some ways. Never learn. Well, I think it's great that you work with children. Now, these troubled children,
Yeah, so some of them I have some of them in the group that are dealing with a lot of issues at home. The parents are divorced. some one or both parents might not be existent in their lives. They might be not there, not present. And it's almost every day there's something new that pops up. And one of the things that I do as a youth advocate or counselor is we try to we ask what's going on in the home. We focus less on academics, more of like their home life, how they're feeling, uh, provide, resources like basic needs, what they need, food, water, shelter, mental health counseling. And we don't give the counseling or anything like that. We we offer those services to those students. Like if, we ask them if they need anything, then we go on our end and contact the appropriate, agencies and then the parents and let them know, hey, the child expressed that they were feeling like this or they needed that. And we just wanted to reach out to you to make sure that it was okay if we can proceed with this. And we also try to document everything. So every conversation we have, we make sure to document it so we know it happened.
Yeah.
You know, I had a student that went through a traumatic event a few months ago, and that was a scare. And fortunately, he was okay. And but one of the main things we do is we try to make sure that we can steer that student in the right path. You know, remind them that they're human and they're appreciated, and and our time is there for them to talk and for us to listen and to help them any way that we can.
Yeah, well, see, that's a wonderful thing about your position. My wife teaches piano in the home and has students come in, of course, and sometimes the teenagers are going through things at home, and all they want to do is talk about the situation. They don't want to play the piano. Well, that's understandable. And the parents will say to her, if this happens, then spend some time with the child because another adult and
Right.
you're a good influence on the child. And so that in your situation, these kids can come to you and ask you things they won't ask their parents.
Oh yeah, and there's some that won't that it took a while to open up, and it would be always a yes or no, and eventually, it's about building that relationship with them. Building that foundation, and once you build that foundation, and they see that you've been there enough to where they'd be like, wait a minute, I can trust Mr. David, and so I feel comfortable talking to him about this. Like, I had a student recently tell me, hey, Mr. David, I'm actually moving, but I don't feel comfortable moving because I feel like I'm going back into the hood, because he lives in a right now in a bad area here in Florida. So I'm like, so do you and he's moving up north, so he's like, and it's North Carolina.
Yeah.
So I ask him and say, have you ever thought of looking at that with an open mind, like maybe seeing the positive things about it? Like, and he said no, and I'm like, well, here you've always been known to get into trouble. You know, not so good things have happened to you. And think of it this way: you go up to a new location. No one really there knows you. It's a chance for a fresh start. Um, you can build a whole new you, a whole new personality, and you don't have to worry about anybody judging you
Yeah.
and saying things about you. You can build a whole new person. And he's like, wait a minute, you're right. That should be an opportunity. But he still feels kind of unsure about it. But I'm like, and then I said to him, because he was talking about, but my mom wants to move, but I don't feel like it. And I'm like, well, have you had the chance to tell your parent how you feel? He's like, well, no, I haven't really thought of that, or I haven't really done that. I'm like, take a moment when you get home and let your mom or whoever is there with you know how you feel about the move, because you have a right to express how you feel.
Right.
That is your right. Let them know how you feel, and that's the best thing you could do is just talk to them, let them know how you feel. And then we followed up the next day, and then he's like, well, my mom wants to for the benefit of her career. And
Mm.
and and then of course then they kind of extended the conversation, and she's like, well, I feel that it's best for my son because of the environment is better, and he can get away from all the negativity where he's at now. So I'm like, okay, so they've had an excellent conversation. So now the trial run is this summer, so she'll be with him, or he'll be with her with his mom this summer, and we'll see how that goes and see if it really helps him. And Dad's here in Florida as
Yeah.
well.
What is called reinventing yourself.
Yes, reinventing yourself. It's so important sometimes.
Yeah, I think of the movie Forrest Gump. Have you seen that?
Yes, I have. It's a classic.
Yes, it is. It's a weird classic, but it's certainly, uh, anyhow, on the New Year's Eve, they were in a bar. I don't know if you remember this scene or not, but Forrest was there with his legless commander from the army. He lost his legs, and two prostitutes were with him. And one of them leaned over to Forrest and said, "Don't you just love it that there's a new year? Everybody needs another chance." And that's the way she saw the New Year's. Is that she might do better, it might get better. Um, I've reinvented myself 2 or 3 times, and it's great. You just going from here to here, and you're doing things better
Right.
because you look at the past. It's a great feeling. Oh, I'm happy what you're doing with these kids, David. It's
Thank
just
you.
great, you know.
Thank you. It's always been a passion of mine since I was a child, and growing up around educators, and my stepmom being a social worker when I was younger. I got to experience kind of what kids were in that situation were dealing with firsthand. She used to take me to, because there are times where I'd be out of school, for because school was out, and my mom would end up taking me to her work, and there's times where I'd be in her office, and then I'd go to out to the sites, to the foster homes, and I got the chance to meet with some of the foster kids and talk to them. And as I got older, it made me realize, what my stepmom was doing at the beginning was very it was very special, seeing how she was trying to change children's lives, and then she went on to teaching, and then that's what kind of got me to follow in her footsteps and do what I'm doing now.
Hmm, great. You got
Um,
to see
yeah,
firsthand.
yeah, it's awesome, being able to see that firsthand, and how much of an impact you give on a child's life.
Well, I've certainly worked with lots of children at camps and YMCA's, and I was in a psychiatric hospital here in Atlanta outdoors. We lived, in cabins and teepees and stuff. And every night we met around the fire. There were 10 kids and me. We meet around the fire, and I'd let the boys talk about whatever they wanted to. And it was amazing, you know, what they would talk about and how they saw things. And, I was able to steer them toward what you say is a more positive way of looking. Um, we all knew that the parents needed to be there, not the kids. But the parents sent the kids because they could, they had the power to do so. Oh boy, if we
Right.
could have gotten the parents there, we could have fixed them. You know?
Oh man. Yeah, right. I agree with you. I agree with you on that one. It's funny how life works.
Yeah. Well,
Well,
hmm, go
well,
ahead.
Lane, I wanted to ask you, do you do any like online counseling? Have with any parents like outside of your area?
That's all I'm doing now is online. You know, COVID came along. I thought that video counseling would be the worst thing on earth. I resisted it, of course. COVID came along. We all had to go to video, virtual. And I found out it has more advantages than in person. I mean, one thing, you don't have to drive across town in traffic. And if the weather's bad, you don't have
Oh
to worry
yeah.
about a tornado dropping hail on you, whatever. Um, and if you're in an office, you've got stuff in there that's going to distract the person. They're going to be
Right.
looking around at that stuff. When you're on video, just like here, we're face to face, and there's nothing to distract us really. I mean, I can see a dark post over there, and in the back I see a little blue smudge, and you see some of my diplomas. But our focus is on each other,
Right, right.
and it's where it needs to be. Um,
Exactly.
so I've really enjoyed the online, and of course it allows me to see people different times of the day, and you know 7 days a week, I can see somebody here and somebody there. And if I had to drive to an office and do that, I wouldn't have that kind of capability.
Right.
Plus,
It's a whole new world out there
yeah,
once you do it virtual.
plus the fact I can talk to anybody in Georgia. That's where my license is. And if I want to teach these courses that I do, I can teach them anywhere in the world because they're not counseling per se, they are courses that can be taught. And it's a whole different business. Um,
Well,
oh,
I'm glad you enjoy it though. It's always wonderful to find something you're passionate about.
oh, I love it. And ever since the very beginning, I took notes on my clients and studied their situation. And every week I would read their notes and catch up on what they had said and do research when I needed to. Well, I started that 34 years ago. Imagine what I've learned about people and their situations. Whereas traditional counseling, what we call person centered as a rule, is the counselor sits and the client talks, and the rule is that if if the client knows that the, the counselor is listening, then he's going to be able to hear himself think better and be able to talk about his situation better. But it's then up to the client to figure out what the issues are and what the solution is. While the counselor's sitting there kind of saying, well, you're getting warm or you're getting warmer. Um, my kind of counseling is totally different from that. It's always been conversational. And so when a person or a couple comes in, I start chatting with them about something, breaking the ice. But it goes on from there. It's just conversation, and people feel so much more comfortable when they're talking to a real person and not
Right.
somebody who's sitting there staring at them. So, it's just difference in how you want to work. Most people go to traditional counseling because that's all that's available. We creative one, there are not many of us, and they don't know about us. So, if they come my way, I feel lucky.
Yeah, and and it also makes you feel you know, very fortunate that they're putting their trust in you to help them deal with their needs.
Yeah. And you talked about the kids, taking some time to warm up and tell you the truth about things. Adults are the same way. I mean, there are some things that an adult won't talk about until he's been in counseling with you for 3 years or 5 years. And if you stay with somebody that long, then you learn so much about the beginners over here. They have the same sorts of fears or reservations, but they're not going to talk about them. One thing people will not admit to is I don't like children. That's very unpopular stance to take. And so it might have to be with me 5 years before they admit I don't like children.
or it has to take a really drastic situation where like this is why I don't like children, and they go through something or they see something that's like no wonder I don't like kids. But then it's like if they flat out tell you I don't like children and they don't have reason why, it's like just explain why. One of the things that I've always told my students is they might say, "Oh, I'm not feeling happy today." So I always go like, "Why?" And then basically it's a conversation among questions. Like, why do you feel unhappy? What's making you feel unhappy? Um, what do you need that I can support you to help you feel happier, more positive? So it's like with you, I'm pretty sure you're when you're meeting with clients, all the conversation is just you asking questions, they giving you answers, and it's back and forth. It's how you build that relationship and that rapport with that person.
Yeah. Well, you've got something going on with teenagers that most people are not aware of, not even the teenagers. But I remember going through puberty. To me, it was an amazing time. I mean, it was like the world looked different, and I could think about things and see them differently, and it was a wonder world. And I would take notes on it, that sort of thing. I was the only kid, I think, school to take notes on what I was feeling. But when you go through puberty, you think that you have these secrets and all kind of secrets about how things are now that I didn't see before.
Right.
And to the teen, they are secrets, and they're not going to tell the parents because the parents are going to poo-poo them. So, and so the teenagers just clam up. They're not going to say anything, and then you get them, and they're still clammed up. So you're breaking through that resistance is something that's very helpful to them, and you can do it not being a parent. You're an adult, you're a mentor, but they will open up to you faster than they'll open up to their parents.
Yep. And that's definitely a fact. That's very true. I see it all the time.
Yeah. Some counselors will not work with teenagers. I don't work with teenagers unless they talk to me. The ones that come in just shut up, don't say anything. I finally tell them, look, I'm a talking counselor. If you're going to stay here, you're going to have to talk. Talk about anything, but you're not just going to sit there and stare at me. And sometimes they just keep staring at me, so I tell the parents to find somebody else. Um, they just don't feel comfortable talking. Now,
Yeah.
other counselors will get them and take them out for a walk or play games with them, play card games with them or whatever. And that's a way to get them to loosen up and talk. I just don't have the patience to work with somebody who won't loosen up quicker. I think one of my talents with couples is I get them to talk to each other kind of cajole them or charm them or whatever I do. But I want them to talk to each other, and I get them to do that. But with teenagers, who come in, they stonewall me. It's like, no, this is not for me.
Right. Well, Lane, I've had a wonderful episode with you, and I've really enjoyed our conversation. Like, um, learning all about what you've done with your practice, and it's really commendable what you do with these couples.
I was going to say a little more about the couples.
Oh
We
yeah,
got
go ahead.
okay. Um, you know what goes wrong with love in the beginning is we fall in love and everything is just wonderful. And as long as we live, we will remember in the beginning how great love was. But when the chemicals leave us high and dry, nothing is easy anymore. And the loving that we felt begins to dissipate. And if we live together or get married, then it's a matter of division of chores and who's going to pay for this, who's going to pay for that. And then we get into our careers and then maybe raising children. But the love, that love and feeling is just gone. And it turns into something stale and cold and boring. And that's where a lot of marriages turn out. It's just all about doing stuff, and the reason for it is they don't have any way of getting back to feeling the love. Now, one of the things that I've gone through and learned about is through a series of whatever. One of them was a couple of dreams where the voice in the dream asked me certain questions and made me think about whatever it was that you were asking about. What I discovered was a way to teach couples to get back that loving feeling. And it's to teach them certain skills. I mentioned listening is one of them. And it's not that they learn the skills and then they automatically practice them. It's a matter of practicing them openly every day that creates the love. For instance, I think that the greatest problem for divorce is lack of appreciation. We don't express appreciation to each other every day. And Maslow, the famous psychologist, said that this is one of the ones we have to do every day. It's like food and water. We have to express appreciation. So I've got one of those built in. So every day, each of the couples say, "I love you because," and then they give a reason that why they appreciate it. Well, this is taking care of that part of love where you're actually expressing not only I love you, which is very important, but I appreciate you for such and such. And in doing that, they feel the love and they're drawn closer together. And the listening thing is, if I listen to you, then I'm showing you that I'm interested in what you're saying. And it's so easy in a relationship to take that for granted and not listen. And so I teach people how to listen. It takes 3 hours in classes. And when they get through, they know how to listen, whether they use it or not. But you've got to listen to get the facts. But you're saying to the other person, I am interested in what you're saying. And that causes them to feel the love again. And I really want to understand what you mean by this thing. I don't think I'm really understanding what you mean. And you begin to dig to find out what that person is really feeling or really thinking about. Well, that causes the person to love you. It's actively loving you like you did in the very beginning. And then you learn to talk about certain subjects that are risky or unpleasant. And you cajole or whatever your partner until they're willing to talk about this. And they love you for it. And it goes on and on and on, teaching them one skill after another. And they get back the loving feeling that they had in the beginning. And it goes on like that. I mean, it goes on as a passionate love affair between two people that thought it was dead and gone and they'd never get it back. So I
That,
think that's one of the great things that I do. I think it's my favorite. My wife keeps telling me, don't put all your eggs in one basket, do other things
that is
besides
very
marriage
true.
counseling. And I want to, but my Lord, there's nothing more gratifying or fun than to teach people how to love each other.
That's
There's
one of the things that it's critical that we need, and that you're appreciative of is the fact that you're out there teaching others how to love themselves, and that's one of the things that we always try to encourage each other is when you're not in a relationship or you're married, the first person you should know how to love before you get involved in that is yourself.
right.
So I
Well,
definitely agree with you on that one.
good luck with that.
Yep, it's never easy, but that's why there's resources and people out there that can help bring that in you.
Yeah.
Oh,
Well, I
well,
wanted to
go
get
ahead.
wanted to get that part in because it's so important. I mean, uh, like the title of this course, I haven't really published it yet, but it's you've got that loving feeling again. It's a song, you got that loving thing. Um, but the loving feeling is just so different from the rational concept of we are together in a serious relationship or we are married. I mean, the passion is there. And after you learn about seven of these, the last one is sexual intimacy. Well, the sexual intimacy is going to already be there because you're loving each other in all these different ways, and you can't help but want to love each other physically. And you'd be surprised, that's one of the first things that goes in a marriage.
Yeah, it's. I mean, I've never been through that before, but I'm sure that's one of the first things because if you don't have that spark of that connection, um, things can't happen.
Yeah.
How many courses do you have that helps that can people go to your website and I guess register for them, or how does that work?
Yeah, the website is counselingservicesatlanta.com. It is not counseling services of Atlanta. It's not counseling services in Atlanta. It is counseling services Atlanta.com. And they can see the courses that I put up. I'm still posting some, and will continue as I create these courses, post them. They can read a lot more about what I do and how I do it, um, and then contact me through a little box for the email. The email is Lane Stokes 18 at yahoo.com, which is fairly simple. People write me if they want to. Um, but I love talking to people about what they want because for the most part, people don't know it's possible. And so they don't pursue it. And I sit around thinking, well, what is wrong with people that they don't want more love? Well, they just think it's impossible. They can't have it anymore. It's something that happened in the beginning and now it's gone. And they'll never get it back, but you can. And there are other courses. One of the first ones I like to teach those who are thinking about getting married is what personality conflicts they have. You got up to 430 of these, and figure out which ones fit this couple. Most couples have anywhere between 50 and 100 personality conflicts. They can't help it. I mean, it's just two personalities coming together and they're in conflict. If they don't know what those are, then the thing's going to eat away at them and cause them to be irritated and cause arguments and fights, and they're not going to know why they started the argument. Well, it's these little conflicts, and some of them are big conflicts. I mean, like if you've got a couple that both of them have to be right, both of them have to be in control, and one of them is a perfectionist, you got the battlefield. And it'd
That
be
is
better
true.
if folks, better if folks didn't marry like that, but they do. And they're strong personalities. And so they get married. Um, I've got another one that is it's probably one of the best things I teach is helping people understand their emotions. I mean, if you stop the general person on the street out there and say, "What emotion are you feeling right now?" Well, for a man, it would be I feel good or I feel bad. There are 10 other emotions, and they don't know what those are. Women know what they are. Um, so I've learned to map people's emotions in what I call patterns. And you see how one emotion affects the other one and how they control you. I mean, until I did the patterns, I didn't find any way to help people understand exactly what their emotions were doing to them. And there are people that they wake up in the morning, they feel happy. And when they feel happy, they immediately feel hopeless. And they spend the rest of the day feeling hopeless and don't know why. And so I can show them by the patterns how to get there. One lady was really fascinating. She was overweight and getting there more so every day. She loved cookies, and she was always reaching for the cookie bag at certain times, but at other times she wasn't interested, and she wanted to know why. And so we did the course, did the emotional patterns, and what we found was that when she felt happy, then angry, then sad, she would eat all the cookies she could get her hands on. But if she felt happy and then sad, she didn't want them. So it was a matter of eliminating the anger. And so when she would feel happy and then begin to feel angry, she said, "No, no, no, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to think of something sad." And she lost the weight, 100 pounds.
Oh, wow, that's awesome.
So that's one of the courses. Another one is how do people see you? And so salespeople will go out and they will dress appropriately and have a success car, put on a happy smile, and think they're positive. But the underlying emotions that they have are negative. So when they're talking to the client, the person is confused. They hear the words, but then there's this undercurrent that they're feeling, and they don't trust the salesperson. When you get the salesperson to align the way that he talks with the way that he's feeling, you make the sale. And one of these was that I got this guy in a sales training program one time. He was he was from up North Georgia where they saw granite, the great big saws, they run by you know machines. But his English was terrible. I mean, he just slaughtered the English language. But he wanted to sell insurance, and so he got a job with a company selling insurance, and he couldn't get appointments. And I said, "Well, what are you telling these people?" And he said, "Well, I'm trying to convey to them that I care about them, and I want to sell them insurance to take care of their family." And I said, "Okay, do you really care about the people, or you just want to make a sale?" "Well, I really just want to make the sales." So cut out this "I care about you" stuff and sell the product. Well, he called me back the next week. He said, "I got 6 appointments and I made 4 sales." Being himself. He got this in line with this, and he didn't confuse anybody anymore. It's just, you know, how things work. And so you learn what you're doing to defeat yourself. And it's a great course. It takes, I think that's a 3-hour course. The condensed counseling courses are designed to teach people in 3 hours what it would take them 3 years to learn in counseling.
That's a lot of information in 3 hours.
That's right. And this one course on emotions is a 5-hour course, but you learn everything about your emotions, and your emotions determine how you think, how you feel, how you talk, and how you act. So emotions are not just something like "I feel sad." These are powerful forces, and you learn about how they are treating you and how they are making you present yourself. Well, you couldn't learn that in less than 5 years in counseling. To
That
get it.
that that's awesome.
Yeah. But these are the kind of things I do. People just don't know, and I don't know how to advertise it. And so not enough people know. And of course, I have people calling me all the time. "Well, I'll take over your social media, and I'll do all this." I say, "Okay, how many new clients can you guarantee me in a week by doing all this stuff?" "Well, we can't guarantee you that,
See, and
but
that's that's where it,
we're going to do all this." "I'm sorry, I just can't hire you to do what you don't know you're going to do. I want the money to go somewhere. I want people to know about it."
right. And you're more of a I'll let those close to me, like for me, I used to do everything via email,
Hmm.
and then I found out how social media is such a powerful tool as far as getting the really important information out, of every podcast guest and things like that. So I do that now, and I still try to keep that email open, in case I want to send out a newsletter. Because you can't get rid of the first thing that helps you get to where you're at now, and even before email, how do we get information across? Newspapers, word of mouth, you know, your neighbor.
Yeah. Well, the problem with marriage counseling is nobody's going to refer you because they don't want their friends to know that they're having marital problems. There's that stigma again. So if I were a plumber and I fixed somebody's pipes real well, I'd get all kind of referrals. But when I fix their marriage, no way they're going to mention me. So word of mouth doesn't work, and that's unfortunate. Um, but I just can't. I love counseling, and I can't stop working on it. So I keep creating all these things, and the people that I use them with course, works wonders, but I don't see enough people. And with social media, I had a mentor who told me if I wrote something every day in my website, then Google would pick up on the idea that I am putting in a lot of content, and they would move me closer up to the front of the line, and it worked. I moved from something like 58 down to third page up, third page from the top.
Wow.
Google listing. And I kept doing that. And then I looked at it last time and they dropped me back about 7 pages. Why? Who knows? So you can't really trust Google. They change their ways of doing things and you get dropped back in the crowd. And if I'm on the seventh page, it's doubtful anybody's ever going to see me.
Yeah, it's like me now. Now you Google me and I pop up pretty much everywhere because I've been, I do not just this, but I do motivational speaking as well. Like I've been able to share my story with a lot of different people, how I grew up with a disability, how I've dealt with that disability my entire life, and just being able to show a lot of society that just because you deal with a physical disability doesn't mean that you have to sit there and pity yourself and feel sorry for yourself, but to know that you're more than capable of doing anything an individual that's physically capable can do.
Right. And I imagine in the beginning you had trouble talking.
I did. I was actually I had limited vocabulary when I was born. I couldn't really read, write, or walk. Um, I dealt with a lot of adversity, learning how to, of course, how we talked about this earlier, loving yourself. I dealt with a lot of that myself. Like I spent years and years and years trying to identify who I was as a person. I would always think about, or say that I was identified because of my disability. That was my identity. But then as I got older and then I got into college and graduated from UCF with my degree, my stepmom, not mom, she said to me this quote, and I hold this to this day. And she said, the cane and the disability will always be a part of you. Cerebral palsy is just a label that society gives you. But what you do with that disability and that label is what will define you in life.
Right.
And here I am now being able to do this host this podcast, mentor students. I've done tons of publications, spoken at universities, nonprofits, um, schools, and it's awesome. It's awesome.
Yeah. Well, in listening to you, there's no speech defect at all. I mean, you talk just like a regular person. And when you sent me the invitation, I went to YouTube and found David, not David, I can't remember his name, but he was giving a speech. And he had come from, not being able to talk at all to learning to use the muscles, whatever, that he could now speak. And he was as clear and perfect a speaker as anybody I've ever heard. You couldn't tell that there'd ever been a defect. And like you say, that's what you do. You overcome it.
You let the actions speak. Actions speak louder than words.
Yeah,
And that's what we do nowadays is let our actions, define who we are.
true.
Well, Lane, I wanted to I guess end this episode on a positive note. So what kind of advice would you give to somebody out there that's currently struggling with dealing with uh divorce and just trying to overcome that?
Hmm. Well, of course, the best advice would be give me a call and let me help you turn your divorce into a happy marriage again. But
Yes.
not everybody's going to call me. Uh, you got to come across, well, when I talk about these communication structures, people can't, a couple cannot overcome them because they can't see them. They don't know what they are. And you've got to have a good counselor who comes in and discovers what they are and turns them around. So if your marriage is on the rocks, you've got to have a good marriage counselor. You can't do it by yourself. I don't care how many books you read or podcasts you listen to or whatever. You've got to have
Right.
a professional. It's like the surgeon who takes out your gallbladder. You can't do it by yourself. You've got to have somebody who understands the structures.
Yeah, or
And
even if you think about it too, um, for you to be in this position you're at today, you didn't do it by yourself. You had a lot of people on the way help you there to get there,
right.
you know?
So accept a little more help. Um, I tell people when they get married, before they get married, find yourself a marriage counselor. And go talk to them before you get married, and then after you get married, and then down the road a little bit, and keep in touch with them. They can teach you things about how to be married that you just don't know. And that's how to have a happy one. My wife and I started going to counseling before, we were married and afterwards, and we hit a rough spot. We go back. Well, yeah, I'm a counselor. I should know how to fix it, right? No. Sometimes when it happens to you, you need a professional to help you out. And so I think that we have the most wonderful marriage around. And, we're older now, but it's still passionate and strong. And the best part is we talk about anything that we want to talk about or need to talk about. We just learned how to communicate. And, you know, people are just so stubborn. They just won't accept help. And what they say is, well, I'm going to go to a divorce attorney and make this quick and get rid of my pain. You don't get rid of your pain just because you get a divorce. You usually add something to it. Um, we're just not we're not raised well enough to have the skills that it takes to have a happy marriage. Now you can have a marriage without divorce, but is it happy? Is it passionate? Is it love? Or is it just a structure, a functional structure that you build and you get by? I'm sorry, I don't want to just get by. I want to
Right.
be in love with my wife.
You want to do everything you can possibly can to help that marriage flourish and be happy and healthy.
Yeah. And the more you do, the happier you are. And that's the thing that folks just don't see. And they get into power struggles and they can't get out of them. And so they'd settle for something less than they could have. I mean, we live in a country full of settled marriages. The statistics are of those who get married, 50% get a divorce within 5 years. 45% kind of drift into a dull, lifeless, and boring marriage. And 5% have passionate, valuable, wonderful marriages. 5%.
Wow. That is
Right?
that is a huge like gap.
Yeah.
Like very small, very small.
Yeah. And 25% of the marriages are divorced within 6 months.
Oof, that's a lot.
Yeah. Yeah. And the biggest complaint is the magic is gone. Why be married? And a lot of the magic was the ability to communicate without words. They lose that one. And so they think the magic is gone. You know, why get married? And so I teach them how to get it back.
In other words, you're the magic man.
Yeah, I guess so. And so I've been called everything. You know, I've been called the love doctor, which is kind of funny. But I can't claim the title because somebody else
Yeah,
already.
of course. It's
Yeah,
claimed. Yeah.
yeah. But my clients
Uh,
call me that for too.
it's a wonderful thing you're doing.
Yeah, thank you. I enjoy it. I just don't want to give it up. And I keep, creating new ways of making it easy or better. I'm
Hey,
just
that's all
addicted.
you can do.
Yeah, just addicted to love.
Addicted to love. You just got the title, one of the titles of the podcast for me. I always try to I don't know. So every episode I have on the podcast, I always try to correlate it to the episode itself. So if I hear something very intriguing that's like I could sound like, this could be a really good title or something that I could mention. And it's like something that pops out. And it's like, okay, so I'll use this. And it's like, then people will watch and be like, Addicted to Love, what's he talking about? And then people like, you know, check it out, and people find, and I've had a lot of positive reactions. Like I've had people say, thank you for having this person on. It helps me out a lot. And that's the best part about podcasting is getting to know everyone that I meet and having those unique experiences, and just having fun along the way.
Yeah. So, what title are you going to give this episode?
I think Addicted to Love sounds like a good one. I feel like it'll encompass everything we kind of discussed, and then and then I'll have a little brief synopsis of what we talked about, and then I usually have the episode like everywhere. So, and then I also have like little snippets of the episode itself, so people can kind of listen to it beforehand,
Hmm,
and they'll be like, "Hey, let me go and check out the full episode," and I have your information there, your website, and where they can inquire to seek you as a resource if they need help with overcoming their marriage. And you've been a wonderful uh person to have on today, and I'm definitely grateful that you were on.
thank you. I like hearing that, of course.
Yeah, always, it's everyone likes to be complimented, and especially in marriage. you know take a second to tell your spouse or girlfriend, hey, you know you, you look great, your hair looks great today, or you have a nice dress on, or I appreciate the little note you put in my lunch.
Yeah, yeah,
Little things make a big impression.
yeah. And it seems like the women are more interested in the little things than there are the big things. Like, I love you.
Yeah,
That's
like,
a good one for them.
like, and one of the things that I've learned over time, especially with my parents, is like, I always try to get them, like a something like a little fancy and everything, and they're always like, no, I'm good with the card, and like my stepmom, she'll be happy with like a Coke and some chocolate. I'm like, Mom, but I want to do more for you because I appreciate you, and I love you. She's like, oh, I don't need any of all that fancy stuff. It's a little stuff that counts. And so I've always kept that in the back of my mind too. Is just it's everything. Love isn't always about material. It's about what you do and how you can express it.
Right. Yeah. And I think one reason that men don't express it any more than they do is it's emotional and they tear up when they get emotional, and men don't like tearing up, so they speak more rationally. You know?
I mean, we'll only cheer up if like our football team makes the championship and they win. They'll be like, "Yeah!" And, fall over and start getting all excited. But when it comes to daily life, it's like, where's the emotion?
Right.
But yeah, yeah, I like to hear both sides. It's always awesome.
Well,
Well,
you've been a great host.
well, thank you. I always try to maintain that upbeat personality and ask as many questions and be open-ended. And I've always had lots of positive, feedback as to how I host the show. So thank you so much.
Yeah, and I'll be making a video or two about your episode.
Okay, awesome. Would you like me to send you the clip of it
Uh,
or the episode itself so you can
yeah,
fit to how you like?
yeah,
I can do that for you.
okay. You gonna send her the whole thing, or you gonna
Yeah,
let it?
I'll send you the whole thing
Okay.
for sure. And then for those listening right now, if you'd like to listen to this episode, it'll be on Spotify, iTunes, YouTube, and every other major podcasting outlet out there. Lane, thank you again so much for being on.
Well, thank you for having me.
And until next time, everyone, stay safe and enjoy your day.